I didn't help them because I was a hero. I helped them because they looked like they hadn't eaten in days. Out here, that kind of thing usually isn't your problem. On a colony like this, you learn early that survival comes first, and everything else comes after, if there's anything left. People walk past suffering like it's just another piece of scrap on the ground. You stop noticing it, or you don't last long. I should have walked past them too. The day had already gone bad before I even saw them. Another job fell through. Another client who couldn't pay. I'd spent hours tearing apart a broken engine core only to realize the replacement parts were worth more than the repair itself. That's how it goes in the outer districts. Nothing works and nothing pays. By the time I closed up my workstation, I had just enough credits left for one proper meal. Not much, but enough to keep me going another day. That was the plan. Eat, sleep, wake up, try again. Simple. The food stall was halfway across the scrapyard, tucked between collapsed metal structures and rusted-out transport frames. The kind of place no one visits unless they have to. The kind of place I visit every day. I got the meal, still warm, wrapped in thin paper that barely held together. I remember thinking it smelled better than usual. Maybe I was just hungrier than I thought. I didn't make it far before I saw them, two small figures crouched between a stack of broken panels and a half-buried cargo container. At first I thought they were just more scrap scavengers, kids trying to pull something useful out of the junk. Happens all the time. But they weren't searching. They were hiding. I slowed down, watching them from a distance. They hadn't noticed me yet. Their movements were off, too careful, too quiet. Not like the other kids around here who learned to fight over anything worth taking. These two stayed close together, barely speaking. When one moved, the other followed instantly, not out of fear, more like instinct. I should have kept walking. Instead, I stopped. One of them looked up first. Her eyes locked onto mine, and for a second, neither of us moved. There was no panic in her expression, no attempt to run, just a kind of stillness that didn't match her size. The other one turned a moment later, mirroring her exactly. That's when I noticed how thin they were, not just hungry, starving. I took a step closer. They didn't retreat, didn't speak, just watched me like they were trying to understand what I was. "Where are your parents?" I asked. No answer. I tried again, slower this time. "Do you have somewhere to go?" Still nothing. They looked at each other briefly, like they were deciding something, then back at me. It wasn't normal. Kids that age either run or beg. These two did neither. I sighed, shifting the meal in my hand. The warmth was fading already. "This place isn't safe," I muttered. "You shouldn't be here." No reaction. Just those same quiet eyes. I looked down at the food, then back at them. I didn't have much. That wasn't an exaggeration. That meal was all I had for the day. Maybe the next one too if work didn't come through. I hesitated. Not long, just enough to feel it. Then I stepped closer and crouched down, placing the food on the ground between us. "Take it," I said. They didn't move right away. They watched the package like it was something unfamiliar. One of them reached out slowly, almost cautiously, like she expected it to disappear. When her fingers touched it, she flinched slightly at the warmth. The other leaned closer, eyes fixed on the steam rising from the thin wrapping. "Eat," I said softer this time. That seemed to be enough. They opened it carefully, too carefully, and stared at the contents for a moment before taking small, measured bites. Not the way starving kids usually eat. No rushing, no grabbing. Controlled, deliberate, like they were learning how. I stayed there longer than I planned to, watching them. Not because I was worried they'd waste it, just making sure they finished it. Neither of them said thank you. Neither of them smiled. But something shifted in the way they looked at me. Not gratitude. recognition. It was strange enough that I almost asked more questions. Where they came from, how long they'd been out here, why they acted like they'd never seen food before. But I didn't. Questions don't get you far out here, and answers usually cost more than they're worth. When they finished, they placed the empty wrapping neatly on the ground. Not discarded, not thrown aside. Placed. They stood up together, movements perfectly in sync, and for a moment I thought they were going to leave. Instead, one of them stepped closer. She tilted her head slightly, studying my face like she was memorizing it. Then she spoke. The voice was quiet, careful, like every word had to be chosen. We will remember. That was it. No explanation, no context, just that. Before I could respond, they turned and disappeared between the scrap structures, moving faster than I expected. Within seconds, they were gone. I stood there for a while after that, staring at the space where they'd been. It didn't feel real. The whole thing lasted maybe a few minutes, no more. I shook it off eventually, picked myself up, brushed the dust off my hands, and headed back to my place. There wasn't much else to do. The next morning I went back to the same spot, not because I expected to find them, just habit. The area was empty, no footprints, no signs of movement, no leftover scraps or disturbed metal, nothing, like they were never there. I checked the surrounding paths, the nearby structures, even asked around a little, though no one seemed to know what I was talking about. 2 girls that matched that description should have stood out. They didn't. After a while, I stopped looking. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Work came and went. Same routine, same struggles, same quiet, unremarkable life, and slowly, I forgot about them. Not completely. Just enough that the memory felt distant, like something that happened to someone else. A strange moment in a place full of them. Nothing more. I went back to surviving. Same as always. I thought that was the end of it. I thought it didn't matter. I thought it was just one small decision in a life full of them. I was wrong. 10 years later, I was still in the same place. Different tools. Same broken machines. Same dust settling into everything like it had nowhere else to go. People came and went, jobs came and went, but nothing really changed. Not out here. Not in a district everyone else had already given up on. I stopped expecting anything better a long time ago. That morning started like every other. A half-functioning generator on my bench, a client who couldn't afford the repair but needed it anyway, and a list of problems I wasn't getting paid enough to solve. I worked through it because that's what you do. You keep moving. You don't think too far ahead. Around midday, the light shifted. At first, I didn't notice. The workshop was already dim, and the sun barely cut through the haze most days. But something felt off. The shadows weren't falling the way they should. Then everything outside went quiet. Not normal quiet. Not the kind that comes from people leaving or machines shutting down. The kind that happens when something interrupts the world all at once. I stepped outside and looked up. The sky was gone, replaced by something massive, dark, endless, hanging so low it felt like it was pressing down on the entire city. A warship, not like anything we'd ever built, not even close. It stretched across the horizon, blocking out the sun, its surface layered with structures that didn't follow any design I recognized. Smooth in some places, jagged in others, like it had grown instead of being constructed. No visible weapons, which somehow made it worse. For a few seconds, no one moved. Then the panic started. People ran, some froze, others dropped whatever they were holding and just stared, like their minds couldn't process what they were seeing. Sirens kicked in across the district, late and uneven, like the system itself wasn't ready for this. I didn't move. I just watched. Because there was nowhere to run. If that thing wanted the city gone, it wouldn't matter where we hid. A low hum rolled through the air, not loud, but deep enough that I felt it in my chest. The ship wasn't descending anymore. It had already taken position, perfectly still, waiting. For what? I didn't know. Minutes passed, maybe less. It felt longer. Then the broadcast came. It cut through every frequency at once. Screens flickered to life, comms units crackled. Even the old systems buried in the scrapyard picked it up. One message, clear, direct. Return the one who helped us. That was it. No threats, no demands for surrender, no countdown, just that. Confusion spread faster than the panic had. People looked at each other, trying to make sense of it. Some thought it was a mistake. Others assumed it was a prelude to something worse. I stayed where I was, the words repeating in my head. Return the one who helped us. It didn't mean anything. Not to me. Not yet. The authorities moved in quickly after that. Faster than I expected for a place this far out. Armored vehicles. Security units. They pushed through the district, scanning, searching, locking everything down. They weren't preparing for war. They were looking for someone. Hours passed like that. Tension stretched thin across the entire city. The ship didn't move, didn't fire, didn't respond to any attempts at communication. It just stayed, watching. Eventually they reached my sector. I saw them coming before they saw me. A line of personnel moving with purpose, not stopping to question anyone who wasn't relevant. They weren't checking everyone. They were narrowing in. On something specific. On someone. I went back inside, more out of habit than strategy. There was nowhere to hide, nowhere to go. The door didn't even get the chance to close. They were already there. Weapons raised, but not aimed to fire. Controlled. Precise. You, one of them said. Step forward. I didn't argue, didn't ask questions. I stepped forward. They scanned me immediately. Full spectrum sweep. Identity confirmation. Cross-referencing data I didn't even know they had. One of them glanced at the others. That's him. I frowned slightly. You've got the wrong. Negative. No hesitation. No doubt. They moved in, not aggressively, but firmly. One on each side, guiding me toward the exit. What's going on? I asked. No answer. Outside, the entire street had gone still. People watched as I was escorted out, their expressions shifting from fear to something else. Curiosity, confusion, maybe even relief that it wasn't them. I didn't recognize any of them. Not really. Just faces I'd seen in passing over the years. People who knew me as the mechanic, who fixed things when no one else could. Now they were looking at me like I was something else. I didn't feel like anything else. Just the same person who'd woken up that morning expecting another day of the same routine. They led me through the district without resistance. No one tried to stop them. No one asked questions. Above us, the warship remained perfectly still, waiting for me. The realization started to form, slow and uncomfortable. Return the one who helped us. I searched my memory, trying to connect it to something. Anything. Nothing came up. Not at first. We reached the extraction point near the edge of the district. A transport craft hovered there, sleek, silent, nothing like the bulk of the ship above. They didn't push me inside. They didn't need to. I stepped in on my own. The interior was clean, minimal. No visible controls, no crew. The doors sealed behind me, and within seconds, we were moving. Up. The city shrank beneath us, the familiar landscape turning into a patchwork of metal and dust. I'd never left the surface before, never had a reason to. Now I didn't have a choice. The warship grew larger the closer we got. What looked massive from the ground became overwhelming from this distance. Layers upon layers of structure, extending beyond what I could fully see. No obvious entry point. Until one opened. A section of the hull shifted smoothly. revealing a passage that seemed to form rather than unfold. The craft aligned with it and slipped inside without a sound. The transition was seamless. No turbulence, no pressure change, just a quiet shift from one space to another. We came to a stop in a chamber that dwarfed anything I'd ever seen. The walls curved upward into darkness, lit by a soft, ambient glow that didn't come from any visible source. The doors opened. They were already there. Figures lined along the edges of the chamber. Tall, armored, not human, not even close. Their presence filled the space in a way that made it clear this wasn't a meeting. This was something else. They stepped forward as I exited the craft, forming a path without a word. No weapons raised, no visible threat, but the control they had over everything around them was absolute. I moved because there was nowhere else to go, step by step, deeper into the chamber, toward the center, toward the reason all of this was happening. I didn't understand it yet, didn't know what they wanted, didn't know why I was here, but as I walked between them, one thought finally settled into place. This wasn't random, this wasn't a mistake, this was planned, and somehow it had always been about me. I reached the end of the path and stopped. Something shifted in the space ahead, movement, not from the soldiers, but beyond them. Two figures stepped forward from the light. At first, they looked human. Then I saw their eyes, and everything came back. I knew them before they said a word, not because they looked the same, they didn't. Time had changed them. They stood taller now, composed, controlled in a way nothing in that scrapyard ever was. Their clothing wasn't fabric in any way I recognized, layered with faint patterns that moved like light beneath the surface. Their presence alone shifted the air around them. But their eyes, that part hadn't changed, still steady, still watching like they were trying to understand everything at once. The memory hit all at once. Scrapyard. Thin hands. Careful movements. The way they studied the food before touching it. The way one of them had said, "We will remember." I took a slow breath. "You," the word came out rough, unfinished. They stepped closer, stopping just short of arm's reach. Not cautious, not distant, respectful. One of them inclined her head slightly. "We remember." Same tone. Different strength behind it. I looked around instinctively, the towering chamber, the silent ranks of soldiers, the impossible scale of everything surrounding us. "You did all this? For that?" The second one answered this time, her voice clearer, more confident. "For that, we lived." The words settled heavier than anything I'd heard since stepping onto the ship. I shook my head slightly. "I gave you food." "That's it?" "No," the first one said quietly. "You chose to." I didn't respond right away, because that part I couldn't argue with. They moved again, closer this time, and for a second I noticed something else, subtle, but there. The way they held themselves, the way they watched me, not as a subject or a curiosity, as something familiar. "We were not what you believed," the second one continued. "Not human, not lost." "I figured that out," I said under my breath, glancing at the armored figures around us. A faint shift crossed her expression, almost amusement. "We were in hiding," she said. Our world was already falling apart. Power struggles, internal war. Those who wanted control and those who would destroy everything to have it. The first one continued seamlessly, as if they shared the same thought. "We were targets, not because we were weak, but because we represented something others feared. Royal heirs," I said, the words forming before I fully processed them. They didn't correct me. That was enough. I exhaled slowly. "So, you ran?" "We were taken," the second one clarified. "Hidden, disguised, sent somewhere no one would think to look. Here, yes, The simplicity of it almost made me laugh. All that power, all that reach, and they ended up in a scrapyard no one cared about. What happened to the people who brought you? I asked. They did not survive, the first one said. No hesitation, no emotion, just fact. And you did? They held my gaze. For a time. The meaning behind that answer didn't need explaining. If I hadn't found them, they wouldn't have lasted. The silence stretched for a moment, filled with everything that didn't need to be said. You could have gone to anyone, I said finally. There were hundreds of people out there. They saw us, the second one replied. But they did not choose us. The first one stepped forward just slightly. You did. I looked down for a second, shaking my head again. I didn't know what you were. That is why it mattered. That stopped me. Not because of what she said, because of how certain she was. You had no reason, she continued. No advantage, no expectation of return. You gave what you had when you had almost nothing. I didn't have an answer for that, because I hadn't thought of it that way. It wasn't a decision I analyzed. It wasn't some defining moment I planned. It just happened. That action, the second one said, changed everything. For you, I replied. For us, she corrected. And for you, I frowned slightly. I'm still in the same place I was 10 years ago, no, the first one said softly. You are not, I almost argued. Then I looked around again. At the ship. At them. At the fact that I was standing here at all. Fair point, I muttered. They stepped back slightly, giving me space, not as distance but as acknowledgement. There is more you need to understand, the second one said. The tone shifted, not heavier, more serious. I felt it immediately. This wasn't just about you surviving, I said. No. The chamber seemed quieter somehow, even with everything already still. Our return is not only for gratitude, the first one continued. It is necessity. I crossed my arms slightly, more out of habit than defensiveness. That's usually how it goes. A faint shift again. Something almost like recognition of the statement. Our world has stabilized, the second one said. The conflict that forced us into hiding has ended, but not without cost, the first one added. I waited. External forces have begun to move, she continued. Powers beyond our system. Expansion. Conquest. War, I said. Yes, the word hung there, simple and heavy. And you came here for help? I asked. No. That answer was immediate. We came here for you. I blinked once. That doesn't make sense. It does, the second one said. Because what we face is not something solved by strength alone. I glanced at the soldiers again. You've got plenty of that. Strength is common, the first one replied. Choice is not. That felt familiar. Too familiar. You're telling me, I said slowly, that out of everything you have, all this, I gestured around us, you came back for a mechanic who shared a meal? Yes. No hesitation. No doubt. I let out a quiet breath, almost a laugh. That's a terrible strategic decision. It is not strategy, the second one said. It is understanding. I shook my head again, trying to keep up with where this was going. You think I can help you in a war? We know you can. Based on what? The first one met my gaze directly. Because when you had nothing, you still chose to give. The words hit harder this time. Not because they were new, because they weren't. And that matters to you, I said. It matters to everything, she replied. Silence settled again, but it felt different now. Not empty. Focused. You didn't come back just to say thank you, I said. No. And not just to offer me a way out, no. I exhaled slowly. So what exactly did you come here for? They didn't answer immediately. Instead, they stepped forward together, perfectly aligned, their presence filling the space in a way that made everything else feel secondary. Then the second one spoke. We came to take you with us. The first one finished the thought. Not as a guest. A pause. Not long. Just enough. But as something more. I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't understand what they were asking, but because I did. They weren't offering me a reward. They were offering me a role. And those two things are very different. I looked at them, then past them, at the scale of everything surrounding us. The ship, the soldiers, the kind of power I'd never even imagined being close to. And somehow, none of it felt like it belonged to me. I fix broken machines, I said finally. That's it. That is not all you do, one of them replied. It's all I've ever done? No, the other said quietly. It is only what you have been allowed to do. I let that sit for a second, then shook my head. You're talking about a war, I said. Not survival in a scrapyard, not small choices that don't matter. Real war. Strategy. Command. That's not me. They didn't interrupt, didn't try to correct me. They just listened. You have fleets, I continued. Resources, people who've trained for this their entire lives. You don't need someone like me. We do, one of them said. I looked back at her. Why? Because they have trained for war, she answered. You have chosen something else. That doesn't make me a leader. It makes you rare. I exhaled slowly, running a hand across the back of my neck. The habit hadn't changed in 10 years. This doesn't make sense, I muttered. It does, she said. You are simply not used to being seen this way. That almost made me laugh. Seen as what? The answer came without hesitation. As someone who chose to act when there was no benefit to doing so, I looked away for a moment, back down at my hands. They weren't steady, not shaking, just aware. You're basing all of this on one moment, I said. No, she replied. We are basing it on what that moment represents. Silence followed, not uncomfortable, just real. I thought about it, not the way they framed it, not the scale they were talking about, just the decision itself. 2 kids, hungry, alone, and me, choosing not to walk past. That's not enough, I said. It is, she answered. For us, it was everything. The weight of that didn't hit all at once. It settled, slowly, like something finding its place whether I wanted it to or not. I looked back up at them. And if I say no, you will not be forced. The answer came immediately. No pressure, no expectation, just truth. You would return to your world, the other added. To your life, same routines, same struggles, same quiet existence. I already knew what that looked like. I'd been living it. And you? I asked. We will continue, she said. With or without you, but you'd prefer not to, I said. Yes, at least they were honest. I glanced around the chamber again, taking it in one more time. This wasn't just an opportunity, it was a turning point. One that didn't come with guarantees, only choice. I thought about the last 10 years, about everything that didn't change, everything that stayed the same, because I let it, because it was easier, because it was familiar. Then I thought about that one moment, the one they kept coming back to, the one I barely remembered until today. A simple decision, small, insignificant. Except it wasn't. Not to them, not anymore. You said there's a war coming, I said. Yes. And you think I can help you win it. We believe you can help us become something worth defending. That stopped me, because that wasn't what I expected. Not strategy, not tactics. Something else. You already have power, I said. We do. Then what are you missing? They didn't answer right away. Then one of them spoke. Softer this time. Perspective. I let out a quiet breath. That's a big risk, I said. Yes, you're betting on the idea that one person can make a difference. We are. I shook my head again, but this time it wasn't rejection, just disbelief. That's not how things usually work, no. She agreed. But it is how change begins. Silence settled one last time. No pressure, No countdown. No one forcing the decision. Just me, and the choice in front of me. Stay or go. Return to what I knew, or step into something I didn't. I closed my eyes for a second, letting everything settle, then opened them. I'm not a commander, I said. We know. I don't have experience in war. We know. I don't even know your world. You will. I looked at them one last time, at the certainty in their eyes, at the fact that they came all this way, for me. Then I guess you're going to have to teach me, I said. Something shifted, not around us, between us. Acknowledgement, acceptance, the path forward locking into place. You will not face this alone, one of them said. I'd hope not, I replied. A faint hint of something crossed her expression again. Not quite a smile, but close enough. I took a step forward, not because I had to, because I chose to. The chamber seemed to open up ahead, the space responding as if it had been waiting for this moment. Maybe it had. I didn't look back. There wasn't anything there for me anymore. Just a life I understood, and a future I didn't. Above us, beyond the walls of the ship, beyond the sky I'd spent my entire life under, something was already moving. Something that would have reached us eventually. Something I wouldn't have been able to stop. But now, that wasn't the point. This wasn't about stopping something alone. It was about standing for something together. I tightened my hands slightly, feeling the weight of the decision settle into something solid. Not fear, not doubt, purpose. 10 years ago, I made a choice without thinking. A small one, a simple one. I gave up my last meal. Today, I made another. And this time, I understood exactly what it meant. I didn't save them because I was strong. I didn't change anything because I was special. I changed it because I chose to act when it mattered. And if that was enough to bring a warship across the stars, then maybe it was enough to help change what came next.